And it's horrible. It's hard to deal with. Very hard to deal with. And my life will never be normal without knowing where my daughter is.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, we're going to look into how Rosemary Bly's disappearance is relevant to Summer Wells. If Candace Wells had nothing to do with her younger sister's disappearance 12 years ago, then is Rosemary's disappearance irrelevant? Also, if Candace is innocent in her sister's disappearance, does that mean she's innocent in Summer's disappearance? Let's think about it. So in this episode, I'll be talking about psychological preparation and taking you through some true crime rocket science isms on our way to answering these questions. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So there is such a thing in true crime as psychological preparation. It may be conscious or unconscious or a bit of both. When a criminal is becoming increasingly criminal material, so a lot of people think that when someone commits a crime, they've been a criminal their whole lives, but criminal people or criminality comes from a place of innocence. Someone doesn't start off as a criminal, they start off as a normal person, and then things go wrong, right? And typically what happens is all they need is a small push in the wrong direction. And I don't mean that from a position of normality. I mean, there are already a bunch of stresses built into the schema, things like financial malaise, anxiety, heightened feelings of frustration, things like addiction. One is compromised in some way. There's some kind of impingement underway, okay? Now, in the Chris Watts case, Nutgate served as a sort of boost for Watts' psychological preparation. And tomorrow, or the 9th of July, is the 3-year anniversary of Nutgate. Nutgate preceded the Watts family murders by around about 5 weeks. So it was certainly quite pertinent, quite relevant to what was going on in terms of nudges and triggers, in terms of Chris Watts' criminal psychology. Nutgate happened on July 9th. 3 weeks later, when Watts went to North Carolina, he was determined to make sure Nico died by secretly giving Shanann what he believed was a toxic dose of oxy. It's possible Nutgate gave Watts the idea of a lethal chemical which could be quote-unquote innocently and invisibly getting rid of a person. In other words, without him kind of getting his hands dirty. Shanann repeatedly accusing his mother, Cece's grandmother, of trying to kill her grandchild might have actually made the idea quite explicit in Watts' mind. The other aspect with psychological preparation in the Watts case was how it fed into premeditation. In the Watts case, he started out becoming cold and standoffish to his wife and children prior to taking their lives. Scott Peterson also became colder towards Lacey in the days prior to her disappearance. This standoffishness is how the criminal-to-be prepares himself emotionally and resigns himself to the outcome. It becomes more of a risk in their minds not to commit a crime than to commit it. Getting away with it, well, how hard could that be? So coming back to the Summer Wells case, even if Candace didn't participate in her sister's disappearance, it seems from Alison Harris's account she wasn't losing any sleep over it. Candace wasn't even bothering to cry crocodile tears over it. The fact that she may have said scornfully to her mother, the you-know-what is dead, why are you crying, speaks volumes. The fact that after 12 years there's no memorial for Rosemary speaks volumes. Is there a potential precursor here for someone who, confronted with a grisly scenario, might be able to move on without being emotionally compromised? might that person be able to act decisively without losing her cool? And we're going to deal with that in a future video, dealing with, was Candace on some kind of substance during the time of Summer's disappearance? What was that substance? And what is the most important question to ask around this issue of substance abuse? Now, there is a potential psychological mirror here, and that brings us to point number 3, for someone disappearing permanently and someone close to her taking that in her stride. There is a potential mirror here for possible foul play that someone got away with, right? In other words, if Rosemary disappeared under suspicious circumstances, and let's say Candace had nothing to do with that, and let's be explicit here, disappearing without a trace for 12 years is suspicious in the extreme. It's actually just 2 years short of Madeleine McCann's disappearing act, and that's one of the most famous missing child cases in the world, if not the most famous. So if Rosemary disappeared under suspicious circumstances, then the fact that no one was charged might be a sign to someone, even someone not necessarily directly related, that something like that can happen, that something like that can happen without any consequences. It wouldn't necessarily need to be someone who was directly involved who would then learn this particular lesson. Does that make sense? I also think another aspect in the potential criminal psychology here is the numbing, deadening tendency that substances have, that addictions have on a person. So you can take any normal human being, right? And if they are sufficiently caught up in substances, if they're sufficiently addicted, then they resemble someone who's not very different from a psychopath. They don't show the right emotions. They are not responsive or sensitive to the outside world. And you don't need to be addicted to a drug in order to be psychopathic in that respect. You can be addicted to your phone. You can be so focused on your phone that you don't pay attention to the children around you, or a loved one around you, or friends around you, or just the world around you. So any addiction can turn us into psychopaths. Social media can even do that. The point here in this episode to stress is that Rosemary's disappearance would have provided the psychological fodder that, when possibly presented with a certain schema of events, the thought may have crossed that person's mind, well, someone got away with that. How hard would it be to get away with this? I'm not going to take it further than that. I will be doing, as I say, an episode on Nutgate on the 9th of July. I'll also be putting a link to a video I did last year on Nutgate if you want to find out what that is all about. And that was dealing with the phone data review in the Chris Watts case. Very interesting. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.